friends, family, and internet strangers. Stephanie here with a new What's for Dinner video. This week, these meals are really tasty, but also pretty easy and budget friendly. Let's get into it.
First up is something so simple, but it was my favorite meal of the week. Pork chop with roasted veggies and some leftover mashed potatoes. But do y'all ever have those nights where you just go, that was perfectly cooked and seasoned. That was a win. That was this kind of night for me. I had already chopped up my veggies, which are asparagus and carrots. I had done that in advance so that when I got home from work this day, all I had to do was start cooking. So, with my veggies, I drizzled them with olive oil and then I am seasoning them with salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. And that's all that went on these. And then for my meat, I'm drizzling that with olive oil as well, and then coating it on each side, rubbing that in. I don't like touching the meat, so I am using a glove with my meat hand and then my seasonings in the other hand. So rubbing the salt into all sides and then pepper also going in on all sides. And then after that, I'm hitting it with my favorite seasoning, which is the Montreal steak seasoning. This is my favorite seasoning to use not only on steak or on beef, but also on pork. I love using this on pork. It always turns out so well. So this is not sponsored. I just love that seasoning. So I am searing this on each side until it gets a nice little bit of color on every side. And then this plus the veggies are going into the oven. For me, I have an air roast function on my air fryer. So I put this in the air fry oven on the air roast function until my pork came out to the internal temperature of 145 degrees. Then I let it rest for 10 minutes to seal in all of those juices. And when I cut it up, look at how nicely cooked that is. That is the perfect color that I prefer to have for my pork. It was seared and the outside was so good and the inside was all nice and juicy, and those roasted veggies and then the mashed potatoes were simply leftover from last week's meals, but this was so good. I can't believe how much I'm raving over a pork chop. And those pork chops came from Costco, and that was a pretty good deal on them that I got in my grocery haul 2 weeks ago, I believe. Also from Costco, this chicken. So after I ate my little bit of rotisserie chicken that I had the week prior, I shredded the rest of it and put it in the freezer. And I had not had this casserole, which I love, in forever. So I decided to use up this can of cream of onion soup and make this casserole. So the recipe calls for cream of chicken, but I had cream of onion on hand and I figured it would go well, and it did. I very much enjoyed this, but if you don't have cream of onion, cream of chicken would work. You could also do cream of mushroom if you're a fan, but I am not a cream of mushroom fan. So I've got my cooked chicken, some sour cream, my can of cream of insert thing here, soup, and then I've got my mixed veggies, which I didn't cook fully in the microwave. These are frozen mixed veggies. I just cooked them enough to get some of the moisture out of them and thaw them a little bit. Once those are all mixed together, and I added some seasonings, I added thyme and the blend seasoning, the Kinder's the blend. Then I'm going to take my stuffing mix. You make it according to the package instructions, and once it's cooked, you add that right to the top of the casserole, and then this goes into the oven until it's a little bit brown on top and all of your flavors have melded together. I'll leave a recipe for this down below. It's one that I got from a craft magazine years and years and years ago, and it's still one of my favorite recipes. I served this with a side salad, and the main reason I'm showing y'all this is because I know some of you also watch my grocery hauls, and a few weeks back I had stocked up on Ken's salad dressing when it was on sale, and normally Ken's can be a bit pricey if it's not on sale, but I got a really good deal on it, so I got multiple different kinds, and I have been loving the ranch and loving the Caesar. It is my favorite ranch and my favorite Caesar, but I was so disappointed in this particular one, which was the onion vinaigrette. And I love normally a good onion vinaigrette. I was not a fan of this one. So if y'all are looking at getting the Ken's sweet onion vinaigrette, see if maybe you can sample it somehow first, because I was kind of disappointed. But I was not disappointed in my casserole because this casserole was so comforting, and the leftovers of this are so good. I'm not a big leftovers person, but this is one thing that I cannot wait for the leftovers of when I have it. The next night, I needed something simple. I didn't get to eat dinner until around 8 p.m., so I took some of those just bare chicken chunks, threw them in the air fryer with some little hash browns and my leftover roasted veggies from a few nights prior, and that was dinner this night. Next up, we're getting into how I made my Easter delicious but super simple. I had multiple days of making the things that would become my side dishes leading up to Easter. Since Easter was going to be just me, I wanted a tasty meal, but I didn't want to be spending the entire day in the kitchen to then eat dinner by myself. So a few days prior, I made some homemade mac and cheese that I knew would reheat well. And because it was going to be a holiday, I did go a little bit more decadent on my mac and cheese than normal. I started out with a simple roux, 5 tablespoons of butter, 5 tablespoons of flour, and then I didn't measure my milk. I just kind of kept going with it until it looked like about the amount that I wanted. And then once I had this kind of base bechamel, I seasoned it. My seasonings of choice when I make mac and cheese are salt, pepper, onion powder, and then garlic powder, and a hefty amount of paprika goes into this for me, and then a little bit of cayenne as well. It took me several shakes to get the cayenne out. I did not put that much cayenne in it. It just didn't want to come out of the container. Once I get all of that mixed together, I let it start to bubble up a little bit and get nice and thick. You can see it thickening up beautifully there on my whisk. And then I add in my cheeses. For this one, the ones that I had on hand were Colby Jack and cheddar. So this is where I went kind of decadent. I put a lot of cheese in this, like a lot of cheese. There were not measurements, but I had gotten the big blocks of cheese from Costco. And so I had been shredding them up and putting them in different portions to go into the freezer so that I will have shredded cheese for several months now on hand. But while I was doing that, I left quite a bit of cheese out to use for this mac and cheese to make it extra cheesy. I also like my mac and cheese to be really saucy. I like my foods to just be like doused in sauce. It's the same way when I have spaghetti. So, mac and cheese, I don't like it to dry out. So, this was quite a bit of sauce for the amount of pasta that I had, but it turned out so gooey and delicious. So, highly recommend seasoning your cheese sauce well and using lots of cheese. So, here comes that the shredded cheddar. So, shredded cheddar going in after my Colby Jack had all melted. And then once all of this is mixed together well, I am just going to pour all of my pasta into this. So, I know I've mentioned Costco a lot in this video, but this was the week after I had just gone to Costco for the first time. So, I had a lot of Costco things. The shiny new Costco membership is strong in this video here. So with my mac and cheese, I used the Bonza chickpea pasta that I had gotten from Costco. And I know a few people had asked me to let them know how that pasta is. And I've now made two different things with it. I made this mac and cheese in this video. And then in next week's video, you'll see I made sort of a copycat Ruby Tuesdays pasta salad type thing. So that'll be in next week's What's for Dinner. And both of those things turned out really well. I could not tell the difference between the chickpea rotini and the standard rotini. So I've got my rotini going in with my pasta, getting mixed up all nice, and definitely recommend this. Although it did look like Costco might not be having this pasta anymore based off of what I saw in someone else's grocery haul. I think it was Gina's Shopping Life. She said that at her store it had the little asterisk, which means they're not necessarily going to restock it. But if you can find this chickpea pasta, it was delicious. So once I've got all of that together, I am going to add all of my cheese on top that's left over because of course we didn't put enough cheese in this. It needs more. And then I'm going to put this in the oven and get it nice and bubbly and get that cheese on top nice and starting to brown a little bit. And then you can see on here I'm putting some little crispy fried onions on top, but only on a portion. That was just to be for that night because I didn't think the crispiness would come through in the leftovers. But this did reheat really well. I had this for lunch for a few days and then also on Easter. Next up in my Easter prep, I love having homemade baked beans. I do have an entire video about this, so I will link it in the description box below. It was the baked bean battle of 2021. When I was home for Easter, my mom made baked beans the traditional way, and I made baked beans in the Instant Pot. We used pretty much the same family recipe, but the different ways, and then we put the family to a taste test, a blind taste test. They all had to taste both baked beans and tell us which one reigned supreme. So I will have that video linked in the description box below if you've never seen it, or if you're looking for a baked bean recipe and forgot that I had one. So I'm just showing it very briefly in this video. I had gotten this salt pork on clearance and I was so excited when I realized that it was already sliced, because slicing salt pork, I don't know why I find it so difficult, but I can never cut through it well, no matter what type of knife I use. So I was real happy that this was already sliced, but I'm just sauteing it using my cup of sugar, which is half brown sugar, half white sugar. I had stevia that I have just been trying to use up, and I swear the amount of stevia in the container is not going down at all, but I could not taste the difference in these beans using the stevia instead of the regular sugar. Tasted just fine to me. It did not taste artificially sweet at all. So I prepped these the night before I planned on eating them so that I could just do the baked part of the baked beans the day of when I got home from work. Again, I was making things real easy for myself this Easter. So after these were done cooking in the Instant Pot, I gave them a little stir, and then once they cooled down a little bit, I put a lid on them, put them in the refrigerator, and that made it very simple the next day. Also, look at how well this turned out. As I stir these up, I tasted one of them and they were just so good. I think part of it was that I had let these soak a little longer than normal, just because by the time I went to cook them, they had soaked a bit, but they were so soft. You can see the way that this made it really easy was not only was this ready to go the next day, but because I had put it in the fridge with all the liquid and everything still in it, all of that fat had solidified on the top and I could just swipe it right off and be good to go without having to really kind of spoon it out while it was still hot. So I put these in with a little bit extra juice because, again, I like things nice and saucy. Put it in the oven and then had this with hot dogs. And this was the night before Easter. So the next day I had my ham steak with my mac and cheese and my baked beans left over. Easter dinner took me less than 20 minutes. But that was on Sunday, so that'll be part of next week's What's for Dinner.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and if you haven't hit that little notification bell thingy, hit that too so you always know when I've got a new video. Thanks for watching.